If I didn't know any better, I would say that this young Fernando Alonso fellow, he's going places. Hello everybody and welcome to basically an F1 podcast. I'm your host, Dan Mendez, and it's a very weird version of today's episode. I'm by myself for the first time, and it is a Saturday. We're doing the podcast on a Saturday just after qualifying, before the race even happens. Of course, we're going to be covering the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend. I just finished watching the wet, soggy qualifying up in Montreal. And what a qualifying it was. Fernando Alonso, front row. Max Verstappen taking pole. Carlos Sainz nearly making a run for pole, but just wasn't quite there in the wet. Lewis Hamilton, back to his Lewis Hamilton ways, trying to get that Mercedes up as close to pole position as possible, qualifying fourth. Kevin Magnussen, as well as Mick Schumacher in the Haas, 5 and 6. Esteban Ocon, P7. George Russell, P8, after a gamble on slicks. Honestly, I thought the gamble would pay off. I was crossing my fingers. I hoped it pay off because I'm just waiting for that George Russell pole to happen. He's been the quickest Mercedes this season by far compared to his teammate Lewis Hamilton. But the gamble either came too soon or just wasn't even a gamble to be made. But I appreciate the effort. He only dropped 2 places. I think he was P6 before that gamble on the soft, slick tires. But everyone on wets and intermediates, actually I think most people on intermediates in Q3 seem to have faster times and just weren't struggling too much to get grip. But I do respect it from George Russell. He still starts top 10, and I don't have any reservations that tomorrow in the dry he will continue that top 5 finishing streak. Daniel Ricciardo in P9, the only McLaren in Q3. And we're going to talk about Ricciardo this episode because we missed 2 Grand Prix. We missed Monaco, big Grand Prix. Apologies for that. And Baku. So Ricciardo's had a bit of an up and down. He started really down in Monaco with a big crash. And then in Baku just had a pretty decent weekend for the car that McLaren brought to Baku. And yeah, him and Norris made gains and people stopped talking about Ricciardo retiring or getting kicked out of his seat. But we're going to talk about that in just a minute because we have missed a lot since last time I sat on this couch in front of y'all. So, where were we? Guan Yu Zhou Guan Yu. However, you pronounce his name. Not pronounce. I know how to pronounce his name. The order of his name. Zhou Guan Yu, P10, gets into Q3 for the first time in his F1 career. I am so happy for this guy after his disappointment, engine failure or engine issue in Baku. I love to see him in Monaco with that crazy awesome save going on for overtakes and stuff like that. He's just had a weird season so far, scoring points on his debut and then just not really scoring any points anymore and then getting crashes and all that kind of stuff. Happy to see him finally making gains and having the more reliable Alfa Romeo for once as his teammate Valtteri Bottas, as we'll see as we go down, P11 right behind him with an issue in free practice 3, I believe earlier today, or free practice 2. I know that Bottas didn't get out for one of the free practices. I believe it was earlier today, if my memory serves me right. But nevertheless, less practice for Valtteri Bottas than his teammate Zhou Guan Yu. Alex Albon for the Williams, P12. Not too bad for Williams. Williams seemed to have been on the up for a little bit with the introduction of Alexander Albon. But yeah, I mean, with teams moving up and down the grid, you would say, where's Williams going to be? They're still really, honestly, at the bottom. I mean, they're the slowest car. At one point, I think I said on the show that Aston Martin was the new Williams. But I feel like they've really come together and made the Green Bull into the Aston Martin that everyone was hoping to see this year. And as a result, Williams is still the Williams that we know, unfortunately. And that means, unfortunately, that Nicholas Latifi, in his first and potentially last home Grand Prix, as rumors circle of Oscar Piastri taking his seat next year, Nicholas Latifi finds himself at his first ever home Grand Prix, sort of shrugging himself and saying, this is great, but I don't know if I have a seat next year or even potentially for the rest of this year after a certain point, as rumors circle that Oscar Piastri might take that seat earlier than 2023. So I feel a little bit bad for Latifi, but with the sort of exiting of Nikita Mazepin, the sport has sort of adjusted its magnifying glass more towards who else can we see leave the sport and give a seat to someone who deserves it. And unfortunately, Nicholas Latifi is the driver that most people have been looking at, as well as Mick Schumacher, but it's kind of hard to really accept that a Schumacher doesn't belong in Formula One. Also, Mick Schumacher has sort of had a weird sort of thing. We're going to talk about Mick Schumacher, as well as Daniel Ricciardo, as well as Nicholas Latifi losing his seat later on in the episode. I won't forget. I hope. I'm doing this by myself, so hopefully I don't forget anything. Behind Alex Albon is Sergio Perez, who heartbroken Q2 exit after just locking up, going straight on, right into the barriers. And I thought he would just be able to reverse out, as Alex Albon, literally the lap before, or same lap, had a very similar incident with the Williams. He literally just locked up, went into the wall, found reversed on track, and just kept going, changed his front wing, but didn't improve on anything. Sergio Perez, though, went into the wall just that much harder and actually stuck the wing inside of it's plastic barriers. If you've ever been to like a drift day or anything like that, it's a plastic barrier. And so the way that it is, the car just punctures right through it, and the wing got stuck. So he's trying to find reverse. I believe he found reverse, but it was no use. The wing was stuck in there, and they had to get a crane to take the car out. They actually showed footage of them lifting the car and the wing just snapping off. Which, by the way, TV direction, at one point we were seeing Sergio Perez with one of the marshals walking the car back to the pits, which was, the marshal was walking the car on the crane back to the pits, and Sergio in his full, racing suit and helmet and everything like that, just talking to the marshal. Who knows what about? I would actually pay really good money to, just be a fly on the wall during that fly on the crane during that conversation. But heartbroken for Sergio Perez. I think he'll be able to make some decent gains in the race. We've seen Sergio Perez come through the field and just storm through everything. He's just a driver that's really good at recovery drives, I guess. His first win, of course, when he was racing for Racing Point in 2020, was a recovery drive. After a lap 1 incident, he was last place, but he somehow found himself on a strategy that worked and won the race. So I don't count him out ever, personally. He's second in this championship for a reason, and that's because he can drive the absolute crap out of that Red Bull. We've seen it this season. I think we're going to continue to see it, and I think we're going to see it tomorrow in the dry. Someone who is also making a recovery drive is the Ferrari boy himself, Charles Leclerc. This weekend is not going Charles' way. Well, last weekend didn't either in Baku after an engine failure. Both Ferraris actually having engine failures. And Charles Leclerc having 2 engine failures in 3 races. Monaco being the only one of the races recently where Charles Leclerc didn't have an engine issue. He had a strategy issue in Monaco, which was better but also not great. So, yeah, Charles Leclerc losing his lead in the championship. And, rubbing salt in the wound, having engine issues. So it's not like he can even fight back. Charles Leclerc, in my opinion, has the car in qualifying to get poles. He's gotten tons of poles this season so far, but he hasn't been able to convert those poles into points, and that, I think, is going to play huge in this championship. And I honestly think in a few races' time, if nothing changes and it's very much the same story, Charles Leclerc will be at a huge, huge disadvantage in the championship to the point where it is impossible for him to climb back, especially with Red Bull doing so well with both their drivers just over everybody else. I mean, Max, defending world champion, won pretty much every race he's finished but one, and Checo just being pretty consistent up until Q2 in Montreal, and even scoring a win in Monaco, which I'm very, very happy for him. And personally, after seeing that and seeing how close he is now to leading the championship, I think there's huge, huge, huge momentum going into Sergio, and Sergio has the confidence to potentially fight for this championship. Can he fight against teammate Max? Will Red Bull let him? That's a totally different story. I'm not here to answer that. I'm just here to say, can he do it? Yes. I think, honestly, a lot of people have more confidence in Sergio doing it than, say, Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz has shown that he can beat Leclerc last year in 2021, but those cars are gone and never coming back. These cars are Charles' cars. Carlos has had terrible luck in these cars and has also not shown too much improvement in potentially really showing wins and points and things you need, consistency, to win a championship. I gotta stop and catch my breath a little bit. Sorry. Sergio Perez, P13. But I think he can make a really decent race out of it. I think that starting there, he will be put on a completely different strategy than Verstappen, which in a race where so many drivers are out of position, like the Haas's and even the Alpines, and even the Mercedes, there's going to be a lot of overtaking, and overtaking tends to breed yellow flags, red flags. So, yeah, I would say there's going to be a lot of movement on the sharper end of the field. I think Max Verstappen is going to drive away, and Fernando Alonso, I think, is going to be trying his hardest to make a move in the early stages of the race, like lap 1. He's even said in his interview after qualifying that he's going to stick one up Max Verstappen's inside. Please don't clip that. It sounds dirty. It's not. It's just he's gonna try to make a pass, get a good start on Verstappen, and try to take the lead of the race. And honestly, I think if Fernando gets the lead of the race at any point, it's his race. He knows the track. He's one of the only drivers that's raced this track more than anybody else. I think, honestly, him and Lewis, and that's honestly it. I mean, I guess... Oh, yeah, Vettel, yes. I think, he has a huge chance. We've seen him defend monstrously this season and last season. Even crazier than Sergio, who everyone calls the Ministry of Defense. I think Fernando is literally like a brick wall when it comes to defense. We saw him in Monaco, which, yeah, it's Monaco. It's tight. It's easy to defend. You just sort of make your car a little more wider than it needs to be, and no one's getting past you. Not even Lewis Hamilton. So, but yeah, that's, I think, what's going to make a great race is all of these cars starting out of position or out of their normal position. I mean, Juan Yuzo starting 10th. That's a big deal. And he typically doesn't really go down the order when he starts up that high. I mean, we saw in Bahrain, he made pretty good progress and actually finished, I believe, 9th in Bahrain. So, I don't know, man. Look, I'm not an expert, all right, but what I see in this field is a lot of cars starting a lot higher than they usually do, and a lot of cars starting a lot lower than they usually do. And we're not supposed to have the same conditions that we had in qualifying. Quite the opposite, actually. We're supposed to have completely different racing conditions tomorrow for the race. So my predictions are it's going to be very interesting. I wouldn't say it's going to be the craziest race ever, but it has the potential to be one of the best and craziest turnover races of the season. So I'm going to go ahead and give my prediction right now. A couple predictions. I think, first of all, it's a very easy prediction. Someone is going to end up in the Wall of Champions, which is the last wall of the lap. I believe it's turn 13. It's literally the last turn before you just floor it towards the line. Wall of Champions, right on the right-hand side. The reason why it's called that is because Damon Hill? One of the hills? The 1996 winner, champion Damon Hill, and Villeneuve and Schumacher, I believe all in one race, actually hit the Wall of Champions. And at that point, it was 1999, and all of them were world champions. And what's also cool is Jenson Button also hit that wall before he was champion. So I think someone will hit the Wall of Champions this weekend in Canada. So watch out. I think we may see a future world champion hit the world champions, or a former or current world champion hit the Wall of Champions. That's a tongue twister. A current or former world champion or future world champion could hit the Wall of Champions. I failed that. I'm sorry. So be on the lookout for that. I think, personally, that's the only wall around the circuit that Latifi will not hit. That's a joke. But Stroll might. Stroll has seemingly been a little bit better. Who knows? He might go into the Wall of Champions in Montreal. We shall see. I hope Latifi finishes the race. And I want to say, this is not my idea. This is completely J-Bone's idea. If you follow J-Bone on YouTube, J-Bone Formula One, he has a podcast much bigger than mine. He is putting out a call to action to vote Nicholas Latifi driver of the day because, as I said before, people are gunning for his seat. It is the easiest seat to get in Formula One right now is at Williams. All you need is $1 and a dream, and also some super license points, and to be better than Nicholas Latifi at driving a car. And right now, that guy seems to be Oscar Piastri, and a lot of people are tipping him to replace Nicholas Latifi at Williams. Williams have, of course, brought in Alex Albon, and I think have started to see the light of not every pay driver is worth the money. And I'm not talking trash on Latifi, but I'm saying that sometimes, I don't know, man. Pay drivers, that's what they are. They're pay drivers. I think that at a certain point, when they crash enough, the money that they're bringing in is no longer worth it because you're missing out on potential points. You're having to repair the car a lot more. And that spends money. But missing out on points, that's money that you're not getting. Williams have come a long way and have actually started scoring points a little bit easier now and find themselves running in potential port scoring territory a lot more. If they had two drivers have like Alex Albon's like caliber or better, they could be in that situation a whole lot more and thus create way more of a situation where they could be scoring points, if that makes any sense. If you have one driver in that situation, that's great. Two drivers, that doubles your chances of scoring points. And points are currency in Formula One. The more points you have, the higher up you finish, and the more money you get at the end of the season. The more sponsors want to sponsor your team. I think, honestly, at the end of the day, if you have a driver that's not crashing as much, it's going to be great because you're not have to spend money on the car as much, and also you're going to be scoring a lot more. And more sponsors are going to be willing to spend money on you. And sponsors don't potentially crash cars. They just put stickers on cars and checks on your desk. So that's my opinion on it. I think sponsors are way more powerful than pay drivers, and points are way, way, way more valuable than pay drivers, even regular drivers. If you have a driver that's great, but they don't score points, and you have another driver that you know is good and wants to score points and is there in that head space and you want to put him in there? Yeah, I mean, money should be secondary. I know that teams like Williams need it, but they're currently in a situation where they seem to have really no issue getting sponsorship, getting help, and getting the financials they need together to get to races and fund their team. I hope Williams get it together. Right. So let's talk about the big elephant in the room, and that is Ferrari. Ferrari got a great start to the season. Immediately started leading the championship with a 1-2 in Bahrain, as Red Bull suffered a double DNF in Bahrain. Well, crazy things happen in Formula One, because last week in Baku we saw a double DNF for Ferrari, and also some DNFs for some Ferrari-powered cars. Much like in Bahrain, the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly caught fire. Both the Haas and the Alfa Romeo had engine issues in Baku and retired. As a result, Ferrari had a double DNF and a double customer team DNF. So only 2 out of the 6 Ferrari-powered cars finished the Grand Prix. It's not a great ratio. And, I mean, I think things will bounce back. I don't think Ferrari will allow their customer teams to suffer. I obviously think they are working on making the engines a lot better for themselves so that Charles can get back into the spirit of things. Because, as we all know, Charles Leclerc is on still a great qualifying streak. He is the first ever driver to pick up 2 poles in Baku. He got one, of course, last year, before, of course, losing it, because the Ferrari, while it was great, wasn't the Ferrari we know right now. And, of course, he got one this year, because Charles Leclerc has been up for pole every single round this year so far. However, that means nothing. The pole doesn't give you more points. It just means that you start next to second place on the front row and have just that small little margin of advantage going into turn 1. At least in Baku. It doesn't really mean all that much to start from pole at tracks like that, because it's literally a 9-degree turn. We saw him lock up. Sergio Perez went, eow, and passed him. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that Charles was going to be on for a pretty decent result, and so was Carlos, honestly. Carlos was fighting with Verstappen at the start, and, I mean, both Ferraris look to be pretty much in their element. Baku, at the end of the day, is just a bigger version and faster version of Monaco, and both Ferraris looked quick in Monaco. So did the Red Bulls, but we're not talking about them right now. So, what does Ferrari have to do? They have to fix the reliability issue. The car is quick, there's no denying that. They can get poles, and even in the wet, Sainz nearly had the front row. And I have no doubt that if Charles Leclerc didn't have that crazy engine penalty that he has, which, by the way, yeah, he has a crazy engine penalty, and will be starting from the very back of the grid with Yuki Tsunoda. Now, actually, I don't see where it says Charles Leclerc starts P15. Well, he qualified P15. Okay, that's why. All right, sorry. He qualifies P15, but we will be starting, I believe, P19, because Yuki Tsunoda has similar penalties, and it was down to whoever qualifies best. Yuki, I believe, qualified 20th, because I think he just went out there to represent the time, and so did Leclerc. They didn't really want to spend time on a wet track to fight over P19, and I don't blame them. So that means Nicholas Latifi will start his home Grand Prix in P19, which I think is a pretty solid start. Lance Stroll will start just ahead of Nicholas Latifi. So, the two Canadians effectively starting dead last if it wasn't for the penalty that Charles Leclerc and Yuki Tsunoda will be getting. Because, Yuki Tsunoda would not be starting last. And certainly Charles Leclerc wouldn't be starting last. Especially in the wet. So, yeah. I bet you Canada really misses Jacques Villeneuve right now. Lance Stroll, his seat's fine. It's Nicholas Latifi that unfortunately I don't think. Driver of the day. Let's vote Nicholas Latifi driver of the day. Let's make J Bone's wish come true. Let's make my wish come true. Honestly, I hope the guy stays away from Formula One, but continues racing in some other category. That's all I'll say about that. Lance Stroll might not be doing great, but him and Sebastian were doing awesome in FP1. I'll see if I can pull it up here in this weird website I'm using to see the quality results. Stroll was doing well. Vettel was third fastest, if I remember correctly. And it was Gasly second. So Fernando Alonso, honestly, starting second was not surprising because he was fastest in FP3 in the wet. FP3 was very similar to qualifying. Except from Sebastian Vettel's point of view, I think something may have been broken on the car or different on the car setup because he was just not putting in the same times as he was in FP3. I was hyped going into qualifying because I knew here's a chance. Here's a chance for Vettel to have a great start and have a podium. Now, my one prediction, of course, is someone running into the Wall of Champions. I would prefer it to be a non-champion because I think it'd be kind of cool to be like, oh my gosh, Ocon's in the Wall of Champions. We're going to keep our eye on this kid now. But Ocon's great. I'm not saying he's going to crash. I hope nobody crashes, but I think if anybody crashes, I hope it's in the Wall of Champions so there could be memes. I want memes. And I don't want it to be Lewis Hamilton or Vettel or Max or Alonso. I don't want any champion to be in the Wall of Champions. I want a non-champion to be in the Wall of Champions. Maybe Charles Leclerc, although I do think he would prefer to just score points and call it a day than end up in the Wall of Champions and have another race DNF that he has to recover from. My other prediction is that we will have a surprise winner. Okay. Not necessarily a new winner, although I would prefer that. I think that if Max Verstappen does not win, it will be a surprise winner, someone that we are not expecting to win the Grand Prix. I think the most expected driver to win this Grand Prix is Max Verstappen because he's won pretty much every Grand Prix that he's started and finished this year, except for one. The other driver that people are not expecting to win, that are expecting to win, I think, other than Max, is Lewis, because Lewis wins everything. He has over 100 wins. And he starts P4, one of his best start, I think the best start this season so far, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it sounds about right. So, I think Lewis went from last to fourth in Spain. And granted, there was a lot of upgrades up and down the field, some doing great job, some doing bad job. And Mercedes have been suffering from porpoising, like really bad. At least they were in Baku because of the insanely long straight they have there. And Lewis was complaining about back issues, and George Russell was complaining about the porpoising just in general. And even the FIA, I believe, have been looking into. I have to read up more about it, but there are potential rule changes that could be coming mid-season to sort of regulate, I guess, ride heights, downforce, whatever, to keep the porpoising to a minimum, if not eliminating it completely, because it's sort of viewed as a safety concern. And I would agree with that. I think that the car bouncing uncontrollably into a braking zone could lead to something really bad. These are the best drivers in the world, but at the end of the day, they are human, and there's a fine line between danger as a crazy, awesome thing to watch and danger as a, well, that's just dumb. We shouldn't have that. And I think porpoising is getting to the point where having a lot of porpoising issues, but Christian Horner also had a pretty decent point in, like, we don't have porpoising. Why should we have to, change our car that's leading both championships, because Ferrari and Mercedes and all these other teams have gotten it wrong. Fair enough. I mean, there are teams that have suffered from it quite a bit, and then there's teams that haven't suffered from it at all, really, honestly. So some teams some drivers can bear with it. Some cars can bear with it. Not every car porpoises in the same way. Some cars really, really violently porpoise, and they start braking. And others, not so much. So that's that. That's for Mercedes. Anyway, back to my prediction. So Wall of Champions, preferably for a non-champion, so we can have memes, and a unexpected race winner, which I don't think is too crazy to imagine. We have Fernando Alonso on the front row, and he could potentially get past Max at the start. And if he does, we all know he's going to stay there. But it's also Max Verstappen. He's crazy. So I honestly want to say Fernando Alonso race winner. But I also want to say Carlos Sainz race winner. A lot of people are saying this is Carlos Sainz's best chance so far this season to get a race win. And I actually have to agree with that, because he doesn't have to worry about Sergio Perez because of his Q2 exit. He doesn't have to worry about his own teammate, who's been winning every race for Ferrari this season because of the power unit penalty. He only really has to worry about fellow Spaniard Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen. And those two guys are starting just ahead of him. So, if those two get to fighting, now hear me out, if those two get to fighting, I mean, right? That's it. That's Carlos Sainz. Now, I will point out right behind Carlos Sainz is Lewis Hamilton. So, Carlos has to have the race of the year. So far, he has to put in great performance. Now, there isn't a ton of gravel around Montreal, must be said. Much like Baku and Monaco. So, there should be no problem for Carlos Sainz to get around, I believe, 70 laps tomorrow of the Canadian Grand Prix and become a first-time race winner. He wouldn't be the first. We're talking Daniel Ricciardo got his first win in Canada. Lewis Hamilton himself got his first win in Canada. That might be a case for Lewis to win the Grand Prix, which I wouldn't be mad at. Honestly, here's the thing. Lewis currently is tied with Michael Schumacher for most consistent seasons on the top step of the podium. He needs a win this season to continue that streak. He doesn't have an 8th world title to beat Schumacher yet. But I think that's next on his list, is to go the most consecutive years getting wins. I think would mean a lot to him. I think that 8th title would mean more. But I think that would really bring him back from Abu Dhabi last year. I think he's still sort of decompressing from that a little bit. And he's sort of starting to let it go because it's a new car, new season, new teammate. Max is Max. I'm Lewis. I've won literally a century worth of races. So, anyway. Kevin Magnussen also starts in a really good place. Mick Schumacher on for some points for the first time in his career. Points he would have gotten already if he didn't drive into Sebastian Vettel. But I'm going to get over it one day. Young Mick, you're making mistakes. Which, by the way, I want to say, Mick Schumacher, after Monaco, everyone is saying, does he deserve his seat And I want to say, yes, he does. Here's why. Last year, he was in a dumpster fire of an F1 car. That was the Russian flag Haas. And we all know that Mick doesn't really do great in the first sort of season in a new discipline. I believe in F2, his first season was meh. And then the next season, I think he won the title. I'm not incredibly great with F2, F3 stuff. So last year, I mean, everyone's like, he was on the grid last year. Yeah, he was finishing like 2 laps down most races because of the crap show that was Haas. The new cars this season, mixed with that, this is Mick's first season in Formula One. And I mean, with the new regulations, it's basically a completely new, level of motorsport. It's like you went from Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1, Formula 1 with the new cars. So, I gotta say, I think he's doing a pretty decent job. He's had 2 incredibly scary crashes. Actually, one really scary crash. And then the other one was just like, yikes. Are you okay? Yeah, he's written off two cars. That has to be said. And I think that Haas have definitely looked at that, and they have come out and said that he has received his first warning on that front of crashing the car. I'd honestly think in Saudi Arabia, that was not his fault. That was Saudi's dangerous, bro. Saudi Arabia's dangerous on more reasons than just Formula One. The track itself scares the living crap out of me, and I honestly don't think we should be racing there. I know that they have a contract and everything like that, but they're building a new track out somewhere. Wait until that one's done and race there. Like, I honestly hate Jeddah so much. It's like my least favorite circuit. It used to be Russia. Now it's Jeddah. So, yeah. That's Mick's issue. He just crashes too much. But then again, he spent the entire year with a teammate who is no longer in Formula One. So, yeah, I think he may be learning a little bit more from Magnussen now, learning to push, and that has some teething problems sometimes. So, yeah, that's my case on Mick. I genuinely don't want to be too easy on him because he's a Schumacher. I do want to be as open-minded as possible, though. I don't want to immediately be like, he doesn't, deserve to be on the sport just because of his name. But at the same time, I don't want to be, like, super harsh on him. Like, he's ran through 2 cars already, and he's run into Sebastian Vettel, and he's thrown away points, and he's not as good as Magnussen. Of course he's not good as Magnussen, and of course he's making these mistakes. It's a totally new car, and he's a new driver to the sport. Because to people's point, he doesn't deserve to be in Formula One because of his name. He deserves to be in Formula One because he went through the proper channels and won races. So here he is. And so is Zhou Guanyu. So is, hopefully, Oscar Piastri. So is Lance Stroll and Nicholas Latifi. So I guess you can be like, well, look, Latifi doesn't deserve to be in F1, neither does Stroll. But they've been in here for years, and you've given them the races that you've given them. So why don't we give Mick the same amount of races, I would say. Another driver that was on the hot plate, or in the hot seat, I would say. Very literally the hot seat, in terms of a seat in Formula One, is Daniel Ricciardo. We're doing this. I'm getting to it now. I did my 2 predictions. Wall of Champions. Unexpected race winner. Will it be a first-time winner? Will it be a surprise winner that we weren't expecting to see yet? Hopefully the first one. I honestly hope it's Carlos Sainz. I was sort of hoping to see Lando in a better position, but with the power unit issue, I believe, in Q1. No, my apologies, Q2. He was not able to set a better time, and will start P14 ahead of Pierre Gasly, who also had a great FP3. And not much more can be said about that. I also wanted to talk about Gasly and where he could end up after AlphaTauri, but that will be a topic for another podcast because I really don't want to talk about Pierre Gasly starting P15 tomorrow. Yeah. Where do I think he's going to end up? Well, I think if you asked me 2 weeks ago, after Monaco, I would have said McLaren. Because Daniel Ricciardo had the worst Monaco Grand Prix. The only reason it wasn't worse is because the year before he got lapped by Lando Norris in the same car. Finishing, I believe, P13 in Monaco. After a pretty decent shunt in Monaco, the team asking him if the car is okay before they asked him if he's okay. Zach Brown saying that he's not living up to expectations. But Daniel Ricciardo has sort of turned it around just a bit. In Baku, McLaren weren't looking too great in free practice and in qualifying. But, I'll pull it up here. They brought it back. Somehow. They did something. And the car qualified. Hold on a sec. It's taking me a second. I am not good at podcasting. Hold on a sec. They qualified in Q2. They made it to Q2. And yikes, I didn't do notes the right way. Shoot. I'm sorry. I don't mean for this dead air. Hold on a sec. Okay, so an overnight during free practice really brought the McLarens with a ton. Both of them getting in the top 10 first time all weekend. They didn't qualify in the top 10 because they got out in Q2, as I just said. But they finished the race quite well. In fact, there was the only controversy with Ricciardo after Baku was that he beat Norris. That's right. Ricciardo beat Norris. I'll just confirm it real quick. Ricciardo runs up in P4 until Gasly makes a move. And then he gets past, whatever. But yeah, he was running in P4 at one point. With Ferrari's woes, both McLarens finished strong in Baku. And guess who's leading them? Daniel effing Ricciardo. So, if you ask me now where Pierre is going to go, I would still say McLaren. Here's the problem. I don't know where else Daniel's going to go. I honestly don't. I mean, I think if he keeps it up, he can finish his contract at McLaren. I think if he starts getting points, starts getting podiums like his teammate, and starts getting wins like we saw last year at Monza, which, yes, was kind of because the Red Bull decided to play piggyback on the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. Quite literally. Lewis dribbled the tire of Max's car in his head. DNFing both. He still won. He still won McLaren's first ever race for years. I mean, I think it was 2012. It was a huge dry spell because of McLaren's Honda days and the happy Honda days. So I think that has to come into consideration that Daniel Ricciardo was struggling last year with a new car. And this car is completely different this year than last year's car. So it's a bit like he's hit the reset button and is starting 2021 all over again. Except this time, he had a solid result in Australia with Norris. He was keeping up with him the whole time. He had bad luck in Saudi Arabia with, I think, an overheating issue, if I remember correctly. He had COVID in the beginning of the year, so his, didn't get off to a great start, and McLaren itself wasn't a great car. And I'm going to say this. I think McLaren don't have a great car. They had a terrible car in Bahrain. Why should we believe they have any better now? I would say that they're definitely better than Williams and Aston Martin, and maybe Alfa Romeo. Maybe. I think Norris is just a really great driver. And as a result, between that and Daniel Ricciardo having to press the reset button, as I just said, I think that it looks like a crazy gap. Because it is. It is a crazy gap. Norris is getting podiums in a car that shouldn't be getting them, and Ricciardo is just trying to learn a new car. He just got to learn the last one. He gets to learn this one now. So, when will he put it all together? Hopefully by the end of the season. Hopefully bound Monza time or so, like we saw last time. And then next season, the car will be fairly similar. I think McLaren needs to stop pointing fingers at their drivers, or the one driver they have at least, and start fixing their car and making it faster. Because the engine freeze is coming, and next year is closer than it was 2 days ago. So, I don't know, man. I just think that this is Daniel Ricciardo's last possible chance in Formula One at this team. There's nowhere else for him to go. I think the only other place he would go is at a team that's worse than McLaren, like Williams. But I think they're more inclined to take on an Oscar Piastri and get him up to speed and than a Daniel Ricciardo. And I don't think Daniel Ricciardo wants to learn a new car again. As we saw, he took a really long time at Renault, took a really long time at McLaren. Taking a really long time at McLaren again because it's a new car. Makes sense. It's a pattern. So, that's my thoughts on that. So we talked about Mick. I think he deserves to be in Formula One. I think he just needs a little bit more time. He's not a paid driver. He's a driver that deserves to be there. And I think he's in good hands at Haas with Kevin Magnussen. He's doing fantastic, by the way. Really sad to see him get out in Baku, but to be honest with you, Haas themselves have been on a shaky ground a little bit because, with reliability, yeah, because of the Ferrari BS, and also they didn't bring any upgrades to Barcelona. They were the only teams not to. So upgrades will be coming, I believe, by the French Grand Prix. That's what they say. And yeah, starting to show. The only reason they're qualified 5th and 6th is because of the rain. It's the only reason, because they haven't been doing that great. If I'm being completely honest. Q1, Q2 appearances, maybe. So, really hoping that Haas return to what we saw in Bahrain with, qualifying P5 and P6, respectively. Having the third fastest car on the grid, because that's what they did. That's what they had. They were faster, what seems, than Alfa Romeo, which effectively is another Ferrari sister team, just like them, but with more of a budget. They were fighting with Mercedes, right? For God's sakes. And they're starting right behind the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. So, look out for that. And right in front of the Mercedes of George Russell. So, they're still fighting with Mercedes. They just need a track to do it. So, that's Canada. That's all I'll say about Canada. I think Wall of Champions, someone's going to end up in there. It's going to be a meme. We're going to have a new winner, maybe, in Carlos Sainz. I think that the pressure may get to him a little bit, but I think if he can push through, he can make it happen. I think he can make it happen. If it's not Carlos Sainz, I will take Fernando Alonso, race winner. I will 100% take that. Who else? Nobody else, to be honest with you. I was hoping for Lando Norris to be up where Lando Norris usually is, so that I can say first ever race win for Lando Norris. Which I thought that'd be amazing after his time in Russia, in the rain, to qualify well in the rain and win a dry race. But again, I don't think the McLaren is that great, and he is starting P14. So it's going to take a bit for him to win the race, so I don't think it's going to happen. Sergio Perez starts all the way down in 13th. So while he's my usual second choice to win, I would say it's looking unlikely in this case, because by the time he gets to anywhere where he could pull strategy and get an overcut on somebody or undercut or whatever, it'll be too late. Max will have built a huge gap, and so will Fernando and Carlos possibly, and definitely Lewis. I think that in the beginning stages of the race, there will be a decent gap opened up, but not what we're used to. We're used to seeing Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen just, and then Sergio Perez and Sainz going right behind them, and then everybody else in a DRS train behind Fernando Alonso or Gasly or Lewis or Russell. That's another one. George Russell also was on for a really good qualifying result. Took the gamble on the slick tires, didn't pay off, dropped down to 8th. I do think he will recover and finish his top 5 like he usually does. I hope he does, because that's an amazing, awesome streak he has going in terms of consistency. I think he will definitely make a 4th protagonist in the title fight, and potentially, if Charles Leclerc and Ferrari don't get it together, he will become the 3rd in the championship, and Leclerc will have to fight him as well. I mean, honestly, right now, if you look at the standings, I'll pull this up right now. Hold on. I'm very excited about this because I wrote this down. Hold on. Right. I wrote this down. Max, now with 150 points, with his teammate Sergio Perez in P2 with 129 points, taking it away from Charles, who once held the lead by a considerable margin, has seen bad luck eke through that lead and then some. He now has some work to do, as he has 116 points, which I think is funny because he's 16, the number 16. So 116 points. He's currently closer, Charles Leclerc, currently closer in the championship to P4 than P2. George Russell with 99 points. Insane for this kid, considering that not even a year ago, it was the biggest thing in the world for George to have 1 point in a race. Now he has 99. George has 99 points, and a P6 ain't one. I just made that up. George, with his 100% start-finish streak, as well as his consistent top 5 finishes with Mercedes improving ever so slightly every race, means he could potentially mount a mid-season title fight now that Ferrari are seemingly out of the game, at least for now. This could very well be a 4-way battle for the title between Verstappen, Perez, Russell, and Leclerc. In that order. Okay? In just a few races' time, we look to at least have a 2-way battle, potentially between teammates, which could be interesting. And I honestly think that might happen. I think that if Charles falls away, Russell may not be able to get the momentum he needs to get up to the Red Bulls, because Mercedes. And I think we'll have a teammate title fight again, like we had with Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber, or Lewis and Rosberg. That's his name, Rosberg. And that's kind of weird parallels. I think, honestly, if Sergio won the title, I think he'd maybe stay in for 1 more year to defend it, but then he would retire. Or just retire like Rosberg did. I mean, he got the title. He's done everything he needs to do. But yeah, I think we could potentially see that. We saw in the beginning of the year, it looks like Max and George, not Max and George, Max and Charles. Then we start seeing, battles with Russell and Verstappen when, Charles DNFs in Spain. Then we start seeing Perez winning the Monaco Grand Prix. And we have George Russell getting podiums, beating Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion. Many of them call him 8-time world champion. Don't know if I agree with that. I don't agree with that, not because of 2021. I do kind of agree with that if you factor in 2007. I think he would have definitely, in a slightly different world, not too different world from what we live in, would have won his rookie season, the title. I mean, he won his first race 6 races in. He's a monster. People say that he's in prime now. Don't know Lewis Hamilton. I think that he is great now, but dude, guy came in as a rookie, 6 races in Canada, won. Tied with Fernando Alonso, reigning world champion at the time. Made his life difficult at McLaren. Alonso left, went back to Renault. Guy's a freaking beast. Anyway, enough about Lewis Hamilton. As for the Constructors' Championship, it's Red Bull who have gone from 0 to 279 points real quick. They lead Ferrari by 80 points. It's not surprising since Red Bull are working with 2 aces, with defending world champion Verstappen and dude that was always around but didn't have a proper car to show his true skill, Sergio Perez, turning Red Bull into the maximum point scoring pair we all thought Ferrari were going to have. Now, let me dissect that real quick. Sergio Perez has been around forever. I mean, he's been around since, just as long as Daniel Ricciardo, just as long as, longer than, I think, Bottas. Like, he's been around, okay? And he started out with McLaren, I believe, in 2011. He actually replaced Lewis when Lewis went to Mercedes. So like 2011, 2012, I don't remember. And within 1 year, he was gone. And then he went, I believe, to Sauber, then to Force India, which of course became Racing Point. And then he lost his seat. He lost his seat to Vettel when Racing Point became Aston Martin last year. He found himself without a seat. And then he won the Sakira Grand Prix. And all of a sudden he had a seat at Red Bull, of all places. Red Bull, who just signed a deal with Honda and was looking like the second greatest car on the grid. Well, the next year they were the fastest car on the grid. And I honestly think the Mercedes was faster, but I think the Red Bull just had a bit more to it in Max Verstappen. I think Max Verstappen really made that car work. So for those of you that say, it's just the car, you're right. It's also the driver and the team and your luck. I mean, Max could have won that championship way earlier if it wasn't for Silverstone, if it wasn't for Bahrain, Spain. I don't know. I mean, he won more races than Hamilton. He was, in my opinion, a little bit more consistent. Hamilton had to do a lot more recovery drives than Verstappen did, if I remember correctly. Brazil was cool. I'll give that to Hamilton. Brazil was amazing. I mean, a last to first finish, a bit controversial at one point, but that's beside the point. I forgot where I was going with this. But Perez found himself in this team, and now he's second in the World Championship. And that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's still pretty early in the season. It wasn't that long ago that Russell was second in the World Championship. But, I mean, you have to sort of tip your cap at Perez for getting in the team and making his way in there so quickly to the point where he is now Max's teammate. And also one of Max's key people to beat. So, I don't know how long that healthy relationship will last. Hopefully it will last a good long while, and we can see a proper title fight between them, or at least some good races, and Red Bull will probably be like, you're going to do the title thing, and you're going to help them. We'll see. Yeah, we all thought that Ferrari was going to have that team. We all thought that Charles and Charles Leclerc and Sainz, we all thought that they were going to be the number one team. In 2021, Carlos came in and beat Charles. Charles, two-time race winner, his first season with Ferrari, signed on as Ferrari's future. I mean, we thought, like, you have this guy that's really adaptable. You have this guy that came in and won races. They're the greatest. But then you have Perez and Max. Max won the championship. Perez helping him. And now you have Mercedes, too, that have sort of a buddy-buddy relationship. Lewis, the world champion, and Russell, the future world champion, and Lewis, they're both countrymen. They both work kind of good together. They're not toxic. Honestly, I think if they were 1 and 2 in the championship, it'd be a different story. But I think, honestly, Red Bull have both of them beat. I think Red Bull really have the good point-scoring dynamic that's necessary in at least the Constructors' Championship. In terms of the Drivers' Championship, when they both go together, one's going to lose, one's going to win. So that's going to suck because there's no way Red Bull can guarantee Sergio that'll win next year. And same thing with Max. They'll be like, we'll give it to you next year. Perez is older. He wants to retire. Let's give it to him now. Max is going to be like, no, he had time to do it. He had a decade to do it. I did it in just a few years. It was a little bit more than a few years. But I want it again. I want to be a double world champion. There's no way you can guarantee me that next year Mercedes and Ferrari and Alpine and everybody aren't going to come after us and do better than us. So I'm going to win the title now. So it's a bit... I think in the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull walks away with it because both their drivers are going to be working their ass off to get points for themselves, and it's going to benefit the team. But in terms of the Drivers' Championship, Max and Sergio are going to work so hard to get points off each other that it's going to turn toxic. It could. It has in the past. So it's not crazy to think it's going to do it again. Anyway. A lot of words came out of my mouth just then. All right. Where was I? This is all stuff I wrote, by the way. I hope you like it. Maximum score point teams that we all thought Ferrari were going to have. While Charles and Leclerc have been having bad luck recently, had a great start this season, unlike teammate Sainz. Wait, what did I write? Hold on. While Charles Leclerc has been having bad luck recently, he had a great start this season, unlike teammate Sainz, who also had his fair share of bad luck, but has also failed to I was very tired when I wrote this, I think. Leclerc, same repair. Okay. I think what I was trying to say here is Leclerc, the same... Sainz has to work on partnering Leclerc the same way Perez matches Verstappen. I think that's fair criticism. I don't think Sainz has been there as much as Sergio has been there for Max. Anyway. Yeah. The prediction for me is that Red Bull will walk away with the Constructors' title, and Ferrari will be fighting for P2 with a rapidly approaching Mercedes, who have 161 points to Ferrari's 199 points. And I still stand by that. Right now, it's Ferrari fighting for P2 when they built a car to fight for P1. So I think they just need to get the reliability back. I think Sainz needs to stop having bad luck. So does Charles. They need to get their strategy in order. It's a bit of a laundry list they've developed for themselves in the last couple of rounds. But I think if they do that, they can start fighting Red Bull. They just need to do it soon. Because Mercedes is Mercedes. And they don't fight for P2 either. So, yeah. Mercedes seem to have fixed all their problems, or are working very diligently and very quickly to fix all their problems, to bring it back to Red Bull for what happened last year. So, in the midfield, McLaren, 65 points, have a solid race and put some ground between current constructors' rival for P4, Alpine with 46 points. Now, this is, of course, after Baku. So, McLaren have a solid race. They're currently sitting on 65 points before the Canadian Grand Prix. And I think they'll be looking to put some ground between current constructors' rival for P4, Alpine, 47 points those guys have. Now, there's only one McLaren in the top 10. There's 2 Alpines in the top 10. So I don't know if that will shake things up a bit for P4. I think it might, especially with a Fernando Alonso win. In all seriousness, though, McLaren, I think, are coming back from a rough start to the season. I think they're just kind of blaming Daniel Ricciardo for a lot of it. But, yeah, I don't agree with that necessarily. I honestly don't. I think that they have a pretty shit car. And I'm a McLaren fan, by the way. Zach Brown, if you're watching. Zach Brown? Yeah, his name is Zach Brown, right? Why do I want to say Zach Braff? It's not Zach Braff. It's Zach Brown. McLaren CEO, Zach Brown. Not Zach Braff, the guy from Scrubs. Alpine should be keen to make up points to catch McLaren, but also keep distance from Alfa Romeo, who have been having an upward trending season thanks to the new regs and Bottas. Now, this is written after Baku, where only one of them finished. And Bottas did have a retirement in Saudi Arabia, but apart from that, has been pretty consistent in the top 8, actually. I think he's always finished within the top 8. Now, he didn't qualify top 8 for this race, and he didn't finish top 8, I don't think, in Baku. But that doesn't mean that he isn't carrying the team. And Zhou actually did score, to his credit, 2 points in Baku. But he does need to do a little bit more, and I think he will do more in Canada with more reliability than he had in Baku. I think that, beating an engine supplier with a Mercedes Junior and a 2-time world champion doesn't look great for potential customers. So Alpine need to be keen to keep up appearances and not lose to Alfa Romeo, who is taking engines from Ferrari and has a Ocon in the seat who used to drive for Mercedes, and a 2-time world champion in the seat in Fernando Alonso. If they get beat by essentially a Finnish dude and a Chinese rookie, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it could happen because currently, I believe Alfa Romeo are closing in and are pretty close to catching Alpine. Now, Alpine is looking to have a pretty decent weekend with both cars in the top 10. But, yeah, I think that's definitely where their focus is going into this weekend. Haas honeymoon is over with no upgrades in Spain, and with Ferrari power units expiring left and right, Haas started to move back down the order. That's such a Will Buxton thing to say. Haas has started to move back down. The order currently sitting 8th with just 15 points, tied with Aston Martin, slowly heating up to form. That's right, Aston Martin is coming of age. They're getting a bit better. Now, I will say they're not starting in a great position tomorrow. I thought they would be with Sebastian Vettel's great FP3, but nevertheless, Aston Martin do look to be a pretty decent point-scoring machine when you compare it to Haas, who have a Danish guy who qualifies okay and sometimes drives into Lewis Hamilton. I honestly don't have an opinion on that. I think that was pretty funny to see a Haas drive into Mercedes. But anyway, I don't think it will lose to Williams, currently sitting in just 3 points, thanks to Alex Albon's red hair, and a shit ton of Lavazza coffee. I make myself laugh sometimes. I wasn't supposed to read this word for word, but here I am. Williams currently sitting on 3 points and a shit ton of Lavazza coffee, finishing second to last with points isn't that much better than finishing last with no points. And I do stand by that. I honestly don't think that it's going to be too much of a difference for Gene Haas to say, yeah, this team's doing great, when all you're beating is Williams. And you only have a few points on them at the end of the season. So I mean by the end of the season, hopefully the points for Haas will open up, especially with upgrades in France like they say they're going to have. So yeah. What else? We talked about Danny Ricciardo. Rumors. I think he's safe. I honestly think he's safe as long as he keeps up getting points, keeping up with Lando as best as he can. A podium wouldn't hurt. As far as next season goes, I don't know, man. I think Pierre Gasly's out there, and it's only a matter of time until one team just goes, I'm going for that. I want the Gas man in my car. And I think McLaren want him, and I think Gasly wants to go to McLaren. Remember, McLaren is a Mercedes-powered team. So, by Pierre going and replacing Ricciardo at McLaren, that could lead to him replacing Lewis at Mercedes, which Mercedes have stated, I think, that they ruled out Gasly when Lewis retires. There's been rumors of Lewis retiring. There's also been rumors of Seb retiring, which he has come out and said he hasn't decided yet. So, yeah, I don't think Gasly will go to Aston Martin, though, although they are also Mercedes-powered. And that would also be a really nice direct route to a Mercedes seat. And I just see Gasly in a Mercedes. I think him and Russell would get along. I think they'd be a point-scoring machine. But it all depends on when Lewis is ready to call it quits. No one's going to force him out of his seat. 7-time world champion. He's going to decide that. Yeah. Carlos at Ferrari, I think he's doing okay. I think this weekend is going to be a big weekend for him. As long as he keeps it between the lines, man, and out of the walls. Just keep it between the lines and out of the walls, man. And finish strong where Charles can't. Mick with another bad crash this season and no points. Does he keep Haas? I already talked about that a little bit. I don't think he deserves a seat because of his name, but that's not how he got the seat. He got the seat because he is Formula 2 champion. Yes. Yeah. He's worked hard. He's worked hard in all the junior categories, and he's in Formula 1 now, and he deserves to be there. It's not a question. Seb to retire, already said. I don't think so. And then Oscar Piastri table for 1 at Williams. I think right now, in terms of the silly season stuff, Ricciardo and Gasly and everybody, that's the one I can see happening. Sorry, Nicholas Latifi. I'm going to vote for you for driver of the day, but Oscar Piastri, he's got your number, bud. He's got your number. So, yeah. Some additional stuff. Australia signed on until 2035, and I'm very glad to see that. Albert Park will be continuing on the calendar until 2035 in a very interesting time we're living in. We're sort of having to be like, does Monaco deserve to be on the calendar? And like, what are you talking about? Of course Monaco deserves to be on the calendar, but then you think about it and you're like, yeah, does it deserve to be on the calendar? I don't even know anymore. There's a whole thing going on in Monaco with, the contract negotiations, and, they think they've been around for a while. They're the crown jewel of their Monaco. They can get away with it. But honestly, I would not be surprised to see Monaco gone off the calendar indefinitely in the future to make room for Grand Prix such as the South African Grand Prix that everyone kind of wants. And personally, I would like to see that a little bit more than a procession around Monaco. Sorry. I mean, this race this year was pretty good because of the rain and the crash. It was, oh my God. But, yeah, Monaco. There's not really much you can do to improve the track because it's a street circuit in, a really old city. So, yeah. 24 Hours of Le Mans was last weekend. I was going to talk about it on the podcast, but we were, of course, filming Formula Drift. I want to give a quick shout-out, Formula Drift. We were there. We witnessed history in Formula Drift. We witnessed Travis Reeder win his first round, and we witnessed Rome Charpentier, I hope that's how you pronounce your name, get his first podium. And they were the ones that were in the final two. So we were looking and we're like, one's going to win their first one and one's going to get their first podium. They hadn't, neither of them podiumed and neither of them won. So it was a really awesome final battle. If you like drifting, it was a great round. Formula Drift New Jersey. Really enjoyed myself. Shout out to Chelsea Denofa rounding off the podium in third. And then Pro Spec, there was my boy, Dimitri Bruschi, defending two-time Pro Spec champion, taking the win at his home track, Englishtown, New Jersey. Represent. I had to say it, but of course, because we were there doing that stuff and witnessing awesome things happening in Formula Drift. Shout out to Formula Drift. Thanks for having us. Thank you for Rick's Magazine. Big supporters of the show, friends of the show, for having us. Dimitri Bruschi, by the way, car wrapped by 506 Rap. Friends of the show, 506 Rap. Not sponsored, but Gus, call me. Just trying to get to this really quick. 24 Hours of Le Mans. What happened? Well, Toyota won. Big shocker there for the... I have it here. Shit. Man, I hate this. Okay. Yeah, Toyota won. Taking another victory with 1-2 overall in the hypercar class with Brandon Hartley, Sebastian Buemi, and Ryo Hirakawa. I'm so sorry. In the winning number 8 Toyota Guzzi Racing GR10 Hybrid, making it the 5th victory in a row. So congratulations to them, Toyota. Big fans. You guys deserve it. Especially Brandon Hartley, Sebastian Buemi. Especially Hartley, I would say, because former Formula 1 driver for Toro Rosso. Yeah. You go, Brandon. Had a big accident in Canada, actually, last time out. So, yeah, glad he's turned around the tables a little bit in his racing career. Glickenhaus. Very happy to talk about this right now on the podcast. Glickenhaus taking P3, the first American manufacturer to podium since 1967. Congrats to Jim Glickenhaus. I have met this dude. He's the awesomest dude ever. He showed us around his endurance race car for the street. That's what they do. They make endurance race cars and then they make them street legal. They're out of Sleepy Hollow, New York, which is like right over there. It's like within an hour or so of my house. Shout out to Jim. Bringing it home for Sleepy Hollow, New York and the US of A. P3 at Le Mans. There's more things coming for that team. I'm buzzing. I'm all Glickenhaused up. Thank you, Jim. Porsche number 9 winning the LMGTE Pro Class after fighting all race long. It was Gianmaria Bruni, Richard Luitz, and Frederick Makowicki. I am so sorry for my pronunciation. Oh man, this thing keeps going up when I press down. So congratulations to those guys. The win in LMP2 went to number 38 Jota, piloted by Roberto Gonzalez, Antonio Felix da Costa. Yeah! Let's go! Vamos, Antonio! And Will Stevens. Good job, Will. LMGT-AM winner was number 33 TF Sport Aston Martin, driven by Ben Keating, Marco Sorensen, and Henrique Chavez. Again, went up when I specifically told it to go down. Hold on a sec, guys. We have just a bit more. Thank you for sticking with me if you've been watching this entire time or listening. Some honorable mentions have to go to number 22 United Autosports car, who was taken out seconds after the start into turn 1. Was able to continue, thankfully, and finished P10, but a rough go nevertheless. A team with even less luck was Corvette Racing, who suffered a double retirement, one of which, the number 64, hitting the wall after contact with an LMP car on the Mulsanne Straight. Yeah, it was just insane. It was like two LMP cars battling, and they just went boop and bumped the Corvette right into the wall. Driver's okay. Great to hear that. And the LMP driver did go over to apologize to the Corvette Racing guys. Anyway, that does it. Yeah, that does it. The last week in racing, from the perspective of me, things I want to talk about on the podcast. Mostly what to expect in Canada. Remember, Wall of Champions, unexpected winner. Driver of the day, Nicholas Latifi. Remember that. What else do I predict for this? This is weird because I don't get the chance to predict it because I don't usually do this on Saturday. I predict a really good result for Alpine. They're both in top 10. I trust Ocon. I definitely trust Alonso. Yeah. I predict a sad race for McLaren. My boys in Papaya, McLaren. So those are my predictions. I'm going to try to get this episode up so that it's on record as my predictions before the race and not after. So if something comes true, I can take credit. But alas, that's the end of the episode. It's been a long one. Just me rambling on. I hope you guys have a great Father's Day tomorrow. If you're here in the States or any other place in the world that celebrates Father's Day tomorrow. I'll be watching the Grand Prix with my dad, hopefully, and then going to do something else because I don't have to do this show. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show, watching, listening. If you guys are listening to the show, you can watch it on YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can listen to it on Spotify as well as Google Podcasts. Links are down below. That does it. I've talked way too much. It's time to go. Time to end. The sun is going down. I'll see you guys next time on basically an F1 podcast.